She hadn't stood in 12 years, not once. But in that moment, with a barefoot boy whispering memories she hadn't spoken aloud in decades, Joanne's leg twitched, then shifted. And for 3 breathless seconds, the woman they all thought was lost stood on her own. The rain didn't fall hard. It just lingered in the air like Charleston couldn't decide whether it wanted to cry or sweat. The pavement in the grocery store parking lot shimmered in silver-gray streaks, puddles scattered across the asphalt like old wounds reopening under a restless sky. Cars crept in and out, their tires hissing over the slick surface windshield wipers, dragging slowly across glass in a mechanical rhythm. Nobody paid attention to the boy standing barefoot near the cart corral. Miles' car stood on the concrete in silence. No jacket, no umbrella. His feet were caked in grime, the cuffs of his jeans frayed and darkened with moisture. He was 12 years old but carried himself with a kind of patience most grown men never figured out. He wasn't panhandling. He wasn't lost. He was watching, waiting. Like the moment itself wasn't complete until the right person arrived. At 4:08 p.m., a black Tesla Model X glided into the first row, its glossy finish almost reflecting the overcast sky. The door lifted up like a wing, and out stepped Elliot Brooks, 52 years old, razor sharp in a navy trench coat, dress shoes that hadn't touched a sidewalk in years, and a watch that didn't tell time as much as it told wealth. His movements were brisk, his presence direct, his gaze somewhere else entirely. Always somewhere else. The store clerk barely had time to load the groceries into the trunk before Elliot tapped the key fob and turned back to the driver's seat. That's when the boy spoke. "Sir, I can help your mother walk again." Elliot stopped mid-step. The rain held its breath. He didn't look back right away. Just a brief pause, the kind people do when they can't tell if they've heard something or imagined it. Then slowly, deliberately, he turned. 10 feet away, Miles stood still, eyes locked on Elliot. He didn't blink. "What did you just say?" Elliot asked, his voice edged and clipped like a blade pressed flat against a table. "I can help your mother," Miles repeated. "She doesn't have to stay in that chair." Elliot's face didn't shift at first. Then came the reaction, subtle, sharp, a flicker of irritation, the kind you get when you've been approached by a stranger who knows too much. He scanned the parking lot. No camera crew, no clipboard, no one watching. Still, it felt like a trap. "You think that's funny?" Elliot snapped. "You think I'm the kind of man you walk up to and play games with?" Miles didn't move. "It's not a game." "How do you know who I am?" "I know your name. I know your mother's name is Joanne. I know she had her stroke 12 years ago. Left side, I know she used to draw every morning before coffee and hasn't touched a pencil since." Elliot's jaw tightened. That landed. His eyes darted toward the car. A woman paused by her door a few spaces away, watching now. Something about the boy's calm, too calm, made the whole scene feel surreal. "Who sent you?" Elliot demanded. "Is this a setup?" "I don't want anything," Miles said flatly. "Just 5 minutes with her." Elliot looked at him like you look at a locked door with no keyhole, mistrustful, but curious in spite of himself. "You don't get into my car just because you know my name, kid." Miles didn't flinch. "Then drive away." That stopped him. Not the words, but the way he said them. Like he knew Elliot couldn't. Elliot stared at him for a long moment. "Then you got a name, Miles." He looked the boy over again. Dirty feet, calm eyes, no backpack, no phone. He exhaled through his nose and muttered, "Get in." The Tesla beeped open. Miles climbed into the back, careful not to leave prints on the leather. Elliot got behind the wheel and pulled away without another word. The ride was silent. The only sound was the soft buzz of the AC and the intermittent click of the turn signal. Elliot checked the mirror more than once. Miles didn't fidget, didn't speak. He just watched the streets go by like he already knew where they were headed. They drove past mossy oaks and old porch swings and rust-red bricks, wet with memory. The houses grew larger, the fences higher, the names on the gates more polished. Finally, they turned into a cul-de-sac nestled behind wrought iron and quiet wealth. The Brooks estate hadn't changed in 10 years. The hedges were still trimmed to military precision, the stone path still swept daily. Elliot parked under the covered driveway and turned in his seat. 5 minutes. "You try anything, say anything that upsets her. I will have you removed. You understand?" Miles nodded. "You'll want to hear what I say." Elliot didn't respond. He opened the door and motioned him inside. The foyer smelled like money and lemon polish. Clean, cold, silent. They didn't use the front entrance. Only guests did. Elliot led him through the side hall past portraits that didn't smile past the old piano no one touched anymore. A housekeeper named Ruth looked up as they passed. Elliot gave her a glance that said, "Not now." "She's in the sunroom," he said. Miles walked like he'd already memorized the layout. That didn't go unnoticed. The sunroom was bright even on cloudy days, wrapped in tall windows that faced the garden. The scent of lavender and linen lingered in the air. Joanne Brooks sat near the window, a heavy blanket over her knees. Her wheelchair was nearby, unused. Her face was delicate now, but her eyes were sharp. They turned the moment she heard footsteps. "You're back early," she said softly to Elliot, voice scratchy but warm. He gestured to the boy. "He asked to see you." Joanne blinked at the stranger. Her smile faded into confusion. "Do I know you?" Miles stepped forward. "No, ma'am. Not yet." Joanne's gaze narrowed. Elliot crossed his arms, leaning in the doorway, waiting for this circus to end. Miles reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded paper. He placed it gently on the side table. Joanne looked down. "You drew this," Miles said. "Back in '83, the cypress tree behind your first house on Rutledge Avenue." Her lips parted. Her fingers trembled as she reached for it. I haven't seen this in decades." Elliot's voice sharpened. "How do you have that?" "It was in a box in the attic, along with the rest of them. But this was your favorite. You stopped drawing after the stroke. I thought maybe this would remind you." Joanne ran her fingertips along the paper like it might crumble. "You from the neighborhood?" she asked quietly. "No, ma'am. I don't have a home, but I know where yours used to be." Elliot stepped forward, voice rising. "All right, enough. What is this A trick? Some sick game?" "No trick," Miles said without looking at him. "Just memories." "And how do you have those?" Miles turned to him. "She whispered your name 3 nights ago, in a dream." That's Elliot stopped. The room shifted. Something about the air felt heavier. Joanne's eyes had welled. "I remember that tree," she said. "The way the bark scratched my hand when I leaned on it. The way the roots felt beneath my feet." Miles knelt beside her. "You don't need to stay in that chair, not forever. But first you have to remember." Joanne reached out. Her hand brushed his cheek. She studied him. "Who are you?" Miles smiled. "That doesn't matter yet. What matters is what you believe." Elliot stepped back. His voice was quieter now, almost hoarse. "This isn't possible." Joanne's left hand twitched again. No one pretended not to notice. And neither of them realized that 5 minutes had already passed and nothing about their lives would ever be the same again. Elliot didn't sleep that night. He sat in his study, lights off, just the dim flicker of the fireplace casting long shadows across the leather furniture. The sketch was still on the desk where he'd left it, the lines exact, haunting. His mother had drawn that tree when she was 29. He knew because she used to sketch at the kitchen table while he ate breakfast before school, pencil smudges on her fingers, loose curls falling into her eyes as she worked. She hadn't picked up a pencil since the stroke. But today, her hand moved. Not because of some new therapy, not because of medication, because of a barefoot kid who showed up in the rain and whispered memories she hadn't said out loud in over a decade. Elliot leaned back, the chair creaking beneath him. The boy hadn't asked for anything. Not money, not attention. Just 5 minutes. And in 5 minutes, he'd stirred something no doctor could. That's what unsettled Elliot the most. Not the mystery, but the fact that it worked. He'd paid neurologists from Boston to LA. Thousands, tens of thousands. And none of them had made her hand move. So how had Miles? By morning, the rain had cleared, but the air hung thick the way it always did before the heat sank in. Joanne was awake earlier than usual, sitting up straighter in her chair, hair brushed, her old pink cardigan draped neatly around her shoulders. Elliot stood by the window, watching her arms crossed. Miles was already there, crouched beside her, holding one of her old sketchbooks. She hadn't let anyone touch those in years. Elliot didn't interrupt. Not yet. Miles pointed to a page near the back. "You drew this one the week before your wedding," he said softly. "The chapel oak, Spanish moss. You told yourself it looked like hope." Joanne's lips parted. Her fingers traced the lines like they were new and familiar at once. I forgot about that one, she whispered. No, Miles replied. You just buried it. Elliot stepped into the room, clearing his throat. Where did you get that sketchbook? Same place you left your guilt, Miles said without looking up. Locked away. Joanne looked at her son. He asked me to show him. I didn't want to at first, but he knew where to look. Elliot didn't respond. He turned on his heel and walked out. Later, he stood in the upstairs hallway, staring at the closed attic door, the one he hadn't opened in 11 years. He climbed the ladder, the old wood groaning beneath him. Dust floated like memory in the sunlight slicing through the vent. He opened the trunk in the corner. The sketches were still there. Landscapes, rooftops, quiet oceans. Her whole life before the silence. He touched one lightly and something inside him cracked, not enough to shatter, but enough to leak. That night, Miles sat on the back porch steps, petting the cat that rarely let anyone touch it. Elliot joined him, silent at first. Then you really think this is about memory? Miles nodded. What we forget owns us more than what we remember. Elliot stared at the garden, overgrown since Joanne stopped tending it. I wasn't there, he said quietly. The night it happened, I was in Chicago, pitching a cloud integration platform. She waited for you, Miles said. She called you that morning. Elliot looked down. I told her I'd try to make it back, but you didn't. No. The silence stretched between them like the years that never got spoken about. She used to make peach pie for my birthday, Elliot said, voice lower now. I always ate it too fast. Burned my mouth. Miles smiled gently. She remembers that too. The next morning, Miles guided Joanne through another visualization. Picture the kitchen, he said softly. Early fall. Window cracked open. Sunlight hitting the tiles. You're barefoot. Feel that, she nodded. Now imagine you're turning toward the stove. Your towel's hanging on the handle. It's yellow, has little green leaves on it. Yes, she whispered. Now reach for it. Step to the left. Elliot stood in the doorway watching. Her leg twitched. Just once. But enough. Her brow furrowed. I felt it, she said. Do it again, Miles whispered. And she did. 2 small movements. 2 silent earthquakes. Ruth saw it too. She gasped, hand over her mouth. Elliot couldn't speak. Later, he called a private investigator in Atlanta. I need you to find a kid. Name's Miles Carr. 12 years old. Possibly homeless. No school records. No medical history. The man on the other end laughed. You calling me about a ghost? Just find him. Elliot snapped. Every detail. That evening, Joanne asked Elliot to bring down a box from the closet in her bedroom. Inside, under old scarves and photos, was a faded Polaroid. A man, tall, dark-haired, smiling, holding the hand of a small boy standing on a diner sidewalk. The man was Joanne's husband. The boy, Elliot's father, had vanished when he was 9. No call, no note, just disappeared. I never told you this, Joanne said quietly, but he didn't die in a car crash. That's what I told everyone. The truth is, I never found him. Elliot stared at the photo, his breath caught. The boy in the picture, he looked exactly like Miles. That's not possible, he said. He'd be in his 50s by now. Joanne's eyes filled. Time doesn't always run straight, Elliot. Sometimes it loops back for the people we forgot. That night, Elliot lay awake. His mother's hand had moved. Her leg had responded. But nothing disturbed him more than that photo. He turned on the lamp, picked up the phone, and texted the investigator. Did you find anything yet? A reply came back minutes later. There's no record of a Miles Carr. No birth certificate. No foster placement. Closest match, a kid who disappeared from a group home in Georgia 6 years ago. He'd be 17 now. Elliot stared at the ceiling, thoughts racing. He didn't believe in magic or ghosts. But what did that leave? By morning, Joanne was asking to be helped to the window. She hadn't asked to be moved in years. Miles stood beside her, offering no commands, just quiet presence. Ruth supported her gently as she shifted to the edge of the bed. I want to try, she said. Elliot was at the doorway. You don't have to prove anything, he said. I'm not, Joanne replied. I just need to remember what it feels like to stand. With Miles's voice steady in the background, guiding her, reminding her of old hardwood floors and warm morning light, she pressed her feet into the carpet. One knee shifted, then the other. Slowly shaking, but undeniably hers, she lifted herself just enough to hover above the chair. She didn't hold it long, 3 seconds maybe, but it was enough to make the room fall silent. Then she sank back down out of breath, but smiling like someone who'd cracked open a door long sealed shut. Elliot didn't say anything at first. He walked into the kitchen and sat at the counter staring at nothing. When Miles walked in a few minutes later, Elliot looked at him like he was seeing something that didn't belong in his world. She stood, he said. She hasn't stood in over a decade. Miles nodded. Not because of me, because she remembered she could. Elliot shook his head. You're not just a kid. You're not just anybody. Miles didn't deny it. But I'm not what you fear either. Elliot exhaled, the weight pressing down, now lighter, but still there. Who are you? A reminder, Miles said. That healing doesn't always wear a lab coat. Later that evening, Elliot took a walk through the garden, the one his mother used to tend before her stroke. The roses were wild now, the jasmine overgrown. But the bench under the sycamore was still there. He sat alone, twilight falling like a soft blanket, and for the first time in years, let the silence settle without resisting it. He didn't understand what was happening, but for once he wasn't trying to. Not everything needed an answer. Some things just needed to be felt. And somewhere inside the house, Joanne looked down at her sketchbook, at the drawing Miles had handed her earlier. A pie. Her pie. Her hands holding its steam, rising, her hair loose around her shoulders. It wasn't just a drawing. It was a memory. One she didn't know she kept. One no one had ever seen. Not even Elliot. The drawing of the pie sat on the nightstand right beside Joanne's sketchbook. She hadn't stopped looking at it since the moment Miles handed it to her. The paper was still crisp, the lines impossibly familiar. Her eyes traced the detail of the pie tin, the slight tilt of her smile, the light streaming in from a window that had been boarded up for years. The moment wasn't just real, it was sacred. And yet she couldn't remember ever describing it. Not to Elliot, not to anyone. She'd stopped making peach pie the year before her stroke. She'd stopped believing her hands were worth using. But now they trembled with something different. Not fear, not weakness. Something closer to awakening. Downstairs, Elliot stood by the kitchen window staring out at the garden that had become wild in her absence. Bees hovered lazily over the mint, and the old bird bath was stained with rust. But something about the scene felt different. Lighter. He didn't hear Miles enter the room, but he felt it. The boy had a way of appearing like he belonged there, even when he didn't. Elliot didn't turn around. She asked me to bring her sketch pencils this morning, he said. She hasn't touched those in 12 years. She never forgot them, Miles replied. She just forgot she had permission to remember. Elliot let the words hang in the air. I created a therapy fund, he said finally. I called it the Miles Foundation. It's going to help kids, ones that don't get seen like you. Miles didn't smile. Thank you, he said simply. It's not for me. Elliot turned, then studying the boy's face. But it started because of you. That afternoon, Joanne asked to walk again. Not alone, but with Ruth and the nurse on each side. She stood longer this time, 5 seconds. Then 7. She took one step, then another. It wasn't graceful, it wasn't easy, but it was hers. The house was quiet when she moved, like the walls themselves held their breath. Elliot watched from the hallway, hands shoved in his pockets. His throat tightened, not from fear, but from something he hadn't let himself feel since he was a boy. Hope. That night, Miles was gone. No note, no sound, no goodbye. Just the porch door left cracked slightly, like the house itself hadn't wanted to let him leave. Joanne found the final drawing tucked inside her favorite book. A pencil sketch. Her, standing, holding the peach pie, her hair down. The sunlight from the old kitchen window spilling across her shoulders. It was the exact moment she'd dreamt about the night before. She'd never spoken it aloud, but there it was, real preserved. Elliot searched the property, the attic, the backyard. He called the investigator. Anything, no records, no sightings, no digital footprint. He's not in any system I can access, the man replied. You're telling me he never existed. I'm telling you he left nothing behind except whatever he fixed. Elliot didn't respond. He hung up, palms clammy. The boy had walked into their lives like a breeze through a locked room. And now he was gone. Days passed, then a week. Joanne kept walking 3 steps, 5, then 10. her arms steadier, her voice louder. She began humming again old jazz standards Elliot hadn't heard since he was a teenager. The staff moved differently too, softer, lighter. The house felt alive. Not because of medicine, not because of science, because something in the air had changed. Elliot didn't question it anymore, not out loud, but in the quiet he still searched. He drove through neighborhoods he hadn't visited in decades, back streets, closed-down diners, bus stops. He carried the photo his mother gave him everywhere, the old Polaroid of his father and the boy who looked just like Miles. Some nights he left it on his desk, hoping that by morning there'd be a clue. There never was. Until one Tuesday afternoon. As he pulled up to the gate of the estate, something caught his eye. A piece of paper folded once and stuck gently between the bars. He stepped out of the car and took it. It was a sketch. A quiet street corner in downtown Charleston, an old stop sign, a street lamp, the cracked edge of a sidewalk. And in the bottom right corner, small, almost missable, a boy. Barefoot, hands in his pockets, eyes steady. No name, no message. Just that. Elliot stared at it for a long time. Then he tucked it inside his coat and walked inside. That evening he sat on the patio with his mother, the sun low, the air warm. Joanne had taken 15 steps that morning, her longest yet. "I used to be afraid of dying," she said softly, gazing at the garden. "Now I'm not. Not because I want to go, but because I feel like I've lived again." Elliot looked at her. She hadn't spoken like this in years. "Do you think he'll come back?" he asked. She smiled without turning. "I think he was never meant to stay." He nodded slowly. He didn't say it aloud, but he hoped she was wrong. The next morning, Elliot did something he hadn't done since he was 17. He wheeled his mother into the garden, just the two of them. No nurse, no aides. They sat by the camellia tree where she used to read on weekends. The sun was strong bees moving from flower to flower, and the scent of mint and roses floated on the breeze. "This is where I used to pray," Joanne said. "Before the stroke, before you left home." Elliot nodded. "I remember. You always came out here early, even in winter. It was the only place I could hear myself think," she said. He looked down. "Do you think God sent him? I think God sends us reminders when we forget who we are." She looked at him, her eyes clear. "You forgot how to feel, Elliot. I forgot how to be seen." She paused. He reminded both of us. The air was quiet for a while. Then Elliot reached into his coat and handed her the sketch from the gate. She studied it, her breath catching. "That's him," she whispered. "The way he stands. Like the ground's never shaken under him." That night, music floated through the house. Old records Joanne loved. Ella Fitzgerald, Sam Cooke, Bill Evans. Elliot sat at the kitchen table, flipping through the sketches Miles had left behind. There was one of the garden as it looked now, one of the attic stairs, and one of Elliot himself sitting on the porch, head bowed, a forgotten cup of coffee beside him. It was drawn from behind, but he recognized the way his shoulders slumped. It wasn't sadness. It was release. And in that image, for the first time, he saw himself not as a man in control, but as a man finally letting go. Weeks passed. The Miles Foundation launched officially. No press, no ribbon cutting. Just a few families, a quiet space in an old community center, and a promise that someone would listen. Elliot visited every week, not for numbers, not for donors. He looked for him, but Miles never appeared. Not in person, not in photos, not even in memory, not clearly. He was like a dream you almost remember until you try to hold it. Then it slips away, but the effect remained. Joanne kept walking. The house stayed filled with music and sketches. Elliot started showing up at work 3 days a week instead of 6. He started calling people back, sitting with silence longer, even laughing. Not often, but enough. He never found out who Miles Carr really was. But in the end, it didn't matter. Because some stories don't need answers. They just need to be lived. And somewhere out there at a quiet intersection near a rusted lamppost, a barefoot boy still waits, not to be found, but to find someone else who's forgotten what it means to be whole. And when he does, the clock will start again. Sometimes healing doesn't look like medicine. It doesn't come in a prescription bottle or from the hands of a surgeon. Sometimes healing walks into our lives barefoot, unexpected and quiet, carrying no title, asking for no credit, only showing us what we forgot we already had. The story of Joanne Elliott and the mysterious boy Miles teaches us one of the most profound truths about life: that memory is more than recollection, it's restoration. Joanne didn't regain strength in her legs because of magic. She began to heal the moment as someone reminded her who she used to be. And Elliot, buried under years of control and guilt, didn't soften because of logic. He softened because someone saw the part of him he'd been hiding from for years, the son who wanted to believe it wasn't too late to care. This story is a call to all of us to pause, reflect, and ask, what have we locked away in the attic of our hearts? Who have we stopped seeing? Not because they changed, but because we did. What part of ourselves have we forgotten how to touch? Whether it's joy, love, faith, or forgiveness, we are so quick to chase what's measurable: success, status, wealth, yet the most meaningful breakthroughs often come from the unexplainable. A memory, a moment, a stranger who sees through the armor we've worn for years. If someone like Miles walked into your life today, someone who carried no credentials but knew exactly how to speak to the part of you that still hurts, would you listen? We encourage you to take this story as more than fiction. Let it stir something in you. Call the person you've drifted from. Dust off that forgotten dream. Sit with your memories, not to dwell in the past, but to remember the pieces of you that are still waiting to live again. And above all, believe that healing is possible. Not just for the body, but for the heart, the home, the relationships that have been quiet too long. The past doesn't have to stay broken. Sometimes all it takes is a reminder, a moment of stillness to bring it back to life. From all of us here at US Instructive Stories, thank you for listening, reflecting, and being part of a community that believes in second chances and unseen miracles. If this story moved you, consider sharing it with someone you care about. You never know who needs to hear that it's not too late to heal, and it never was.